Right, I believe we are live. Please, people in the chat, tell me if you can see or hear us properly. But as you can see, this is a shout out to Alt Ending because he said to make the Bowers and James Copley thing a regular thing. So we are here. James is back. So James, let's just pretend we haven't spoken for 5 minutes, but I'll just ask you how you're doing.
Yeah, very good. A bit bored, to be honest. The international break. We've just said now it's like one extreme to the other, isn't it? You've got the transfer window and the start of the Premier League season, and then all of a sudden the transfer window shuts, and then you have an international break, which I find really tedious and boring. I don't really watch much international football. I take a passing interest when Sunderland have players featuring for their sides, just in the hope that they don't get injured, really. But it all looks okay on that front so far, fingers crossed. So, yeah, I'm really looking forward to just getting back to the normal season and Palace away on Saturday.
It still feels weird we're saying Palace. I mean, look, you can talk about Slicer Club, whatever. It feels still weird that we're talking about Palace away, not Accrington Stanley away, which is like, and I mean that with the greatest of respect to Accrington. I mean, funnily enough, when you were talking about the international break, I kind of spent my Saturday watching, was it Newport versus Bristol Rovers, and then bits of Bromley versus Gillingham, just because I've got more interest in League One and League Two than I do international football, apart from tournaments, and also because when we've played Bristol Rovers and Gillingham in League One, I'm always intrigued to see how teams that we have faced in League One are getting on currently. So, obviously, I think I saw Bristol Rovers. I think it was at win 3-2 at Newport, although they were 3-0 up and nearly throwing it away. And then Gillingham were 2-0 down at Bromley with half an hour to go. So, it's been pretty entertaining, to be fair.
This sounds really really bad, but I have no desire to watch a League One game ever again in my
No, I
life.
don't think it. No, it's more sad on me than you, to be
In
fair.
my dad's team, Cardiff, are in League One now and doing quite well. And I've seen Cardiff quite a lot over the years live with me dad and brother. I wouldn't say they're my second team, but I have a slight soft spot for Cardiff. I don't think you can really have two teams, but if I had to pick another one, it would be Cardiff. And I still haven't watched any of their League One games yet, so I feel a little bit
Yeah.
guilty. But the Championship I really like as a league. I think the
As
style
long
of
as we
football.
don't go back to it.
Yeah. I think the style of football can be really good in there. It's really exciting, really competitive. But I find like League One can be a bit dull. And when we were in League One, it was just
Tedious.
tedious, and the amount of time the ball was in play was just horrendous, wasn't it? And how slow it can be. Don't get me wrong. I'm sure there's some good games and some decent teams in there, but yeah, I've just call me a bit snobbish, but I've just got no desire to watch any League One football after 4 seasons of it.
Yeah, I think the thing with League One that kind of, well, I think I've said this before, but the thing that kind of annoyed me when we were in League One the most was the contradictions between narratives from other fans, where it was you can't expect to just walk every game. You're not a massive club anymore. You're in League One the same as the rest of us. Oh, but by the way, when we're set up against you, we're going to put an extra 10% in against you because you're Sunderland. So like, guys, which one is it? Like, you can't have it both ways. So I was never. Don't get me wrong. I think if we hadn't had got promoted at the end of last season, I could have lived with it because at least you're going. Oh, at least it's not Cheltenham away.
Yeah.
And as Thane said there, Palace away is better than Cheltenham away.
I think the
Yeah.
thing about League One that used to annoy me was just the amount of clubs that wanted to force a rivalry against Sunderland, and I
Oh,
got it
that
because
was
obviously
awful.
Sunderland were a big scalp in the division, and they weren't doing too well. But I never really thought that Sunderland fans were like arrogant
Yeah.
about where they should be. Obviously, there was an expectation and a want that Sunderland maybe should be doing better than they are. I think that's absolutely fair enough. But I don't think we really, as a fan base, sort of went into League One, you know, with loads of arrogance. But then, like all of the tin pot things that used to happen, like some journeyman striker who,
Or Joey Barton here. Yeah.
yeah, who Joey Barton's comments, or some journeyman striker who once stepped foot in Newcastle for university would throw up the Shearer sign, and that was it Darius Charles, the Wickham Wanderers Our House thing, which was just like ridiculous.
Oh, that was
That
awful.
that's proof actually that like sportsmen just make up things to get themselves motivated, because we didn't come with any Sunderland presence. We were just Sunderland going to Wickham, and like we travel in numbers, and that's just the identity of the club. I don't think
Yeah.
we ever really. I mean, you want Sunderland to get a result, but we didn't like expect Sunderland to get results against rivals or anything like that. In terms of being arrogant, as I say, you want them to, but yeah, just a very bizarre time, that 4 years. Very
Yeah,
bizarre
it
time.
was. I think the thing I remember when we played it. Right, sorry guys, we will get onto the current stuff before we get out of your PTSDs of the League One era. But like I remember, like even when Tom Hopper scored the aggregate winner for Lincoln against us at the stadium, like and of course he does the Shearer celebration. Now I don't know if that was his regular celebration. If it was, then fair enough. But I would, knowing the way everyone was going on about it, I would not have been surprised if it was specifically because they were playing us. But you never know. We'll wait and see. We'll wait and see. But yes, I'm just quickly going through some of the comments before we chat about the current state of affairs at the moment. Ian, the further we go in the season, the more we realise how important Watson was and how much respect for him we have now. And yeah, this is the thing that James himself said during the summer, that it's funny if you think back to, if it wasn't for that moment from Kiefer Moore deciding he wanted to get Sunderland promoted after all, and then Tommy Watson finishing the back pass for him basically, then it's amazing how different things could look now. If you look at where Sheffield United are in the Championship and what's happened with us in the Prem, it's night and day, and it's quite a scary prospect, really. Let's have a look. Thane saying, to be fair though, we've won our last 3 visits at Palace: 1-3, 0-1, 0-4. Yeah, if David Moyes can beat Crystal, if David Moyes' Sunderland could beat Crystal Palace, then Reggie's Labrie Sunderland could. Even though Palace are probably considerably better now than what they were back then. What does one currently? Oh yeah, what's this thing? Calling the Echo, Diarra and Sadiq could be out for up to 8 weeks. Is that an international thing, by the way?
Yeah, that's the so if both teams progressed in the African Cup of Nations,
Right. Okay.
then they could be out for up to 8 games, but it's dependent on how the teams do. I think there's 9 players, but that includes Abdullahi and Blondie, the 4th choice goalkeeper. So you're looking at like sort of 7 first team players that could potentially be out for a period of time. Obviously, some will come back quicker than others. So it'll be really interesting, actually. My main concern is obviously Habib Diarra and Noah Siddiqui, because that midfield's looked good, hasn't it? So if if their teams, Congo and Cameroon, go deep into the tournament, obviously Masuaku's a Congolese player as well, then you could be looking at 2 out of the 3 starting midfielders being out for quite a bit. Obviously, Sunderland have some reserve players, very good reserve players, actually. Dan Neil, Chris Rigg, Enzo Lefebvre could play there. But my thought was I just really like that midfield 3 with Granit Xhaka anchoring it, and it would be a shame over a busy period to lose them for an extended length of time. But Sunderland knew this, and I guess that's the risk you take. Also, I think as a fan base, we've talked up the abilities of Chris Rigg and Dan Neil over the years, haven't we? And rightly so. So it would be good for them to have a chance, I think, come the African Cup of Nations. But it's just to sort of balance this against the League One chat. It's a weird conversation to be having, isn't it? We're having to worry about AFCON and these £30 million players missing games against Manchester City and Tottenham. You know what I mean? Like it's quite nice, really.
No, I think it is. And actually, just something that Etienne's just put here, and I think she's right, which is Watson's goal's worth 200 million and we sold him for 12. And it's funny how, like, again, it comes back to those sort of moments. And even then, if you look at what both times Sunderland got promoted from League One to the Premier League, it was via the playoffs, wasn't it? So, it's scary and yet fascinating at the same time to think how fine margins in football could be. And to link it to the Premier League, I think a lot of games, like especially the likes of, say, the Brentford game, was probably a game of fine margins in a lot of ways, where for anyone who doesn't know, because I'm sad, I've got the highlights of the Brentford game up on the YouTube on my big TV at the minute, just to have something in the background. But yeah, I mean, like that one was like missed. Well, we probably saw my video. Missed penalty. What was it? Goal disallowed. Penalty saved. Goal. Then Sunderland penalty. Might miss it. Score it. Elson Isidore scores. Might get disallowed as allowed. The emotions were absolutely all over the place. But let's go on to the start of the season. Before we talk about the sort of aftermath of the transfer stuff. Obviously, guys, if you've got questions for James, then while I've managed to kidnap him and get him on here, then that would be much. Then get yourself in the chat. Let's quickly see. SJ says Palace will be unbeaten. Will be a tough game. Yeah, I'd definitely take a point on Saturday. Actually, I think Palace away is a very, very hard game. But these are the games we wanted to play. These are the games that we want to be in the Prem for. We want to become established again. Whether we do, time will tell or not. But yeah, let's quickly talk about our start of the season. So obviously we started with a 3-0 win over West Ham, which I'm sure James would agree is probably. It's kind of like the last game in a cycle of memorable games where you have the Coventry 2 legs, then the final, then the opening day in the Prem against West Ham. Each one of them felt like an event to me, and West Ham is no exception. That game, I don't know what you think, but to me, that felt like an event in the making for 8 years.
Yeah, brilliant. It was very cathartic. It was a release, wasn't it? Obviously, to win the game so convincingly in the end was just brilliant, given the last time Sunderland were in the Premier League it obviously ended with relegation. And really, when was the last time you could say that Sunderland had been any good? It would be under Allardyce, wouldn't it, towards the back end of that second to last season, where there was a little bit of a buzz around the place. So, but looking in and around our 10 season stay in the Premier League, I mean, the highs weren't that high, really, whether when you consider it, we finished 10th under Bruce, but we started, I think, that final day at like 15th or something, and there was a couple of results.
And we beat West Ham 3-0, funnily enough, and then
we
ended
did.
up to 10th, yeah.
Jack Colback, Bolo's End, and maybe Riveros, was it? Scored?
Something like that. It's that long ago, I've forgotten it.
I remember the West Brom striker scored a hat-trick against Newcastle, which actually ended up helping us finish 10th that day. But, you had the highs of avoiding relegation under Poyet and Advocat. We beat Newcastle famously 6 times in a row, which was good. But there was never really a sort of like a feeling that Sunderland could push on, really, to my mind. There
wasn't much progression, was there?
No, there were false dawns. We thought like Di Canio could change it, but you always sort of thought that and feared that there wasn't really a plan or there wasn't really much of a strategy. Come what may this season, I think that's completely changed now. You can't accuse Sunderland of not having a strategy and a plan. Whether it works or not, I guess is another matter, because the Premier League is now so competitive. But if Sunderland had had this sort of strategy and plan back when they were in the Premier League 8 years ago or whatever, I think they would have done well and thrived. I honestly do, because I think it's a really sound strategy. The problem is now is that everybody else is caught up, and this is what everybody's doing. Everybody's running their football club in a competent way. For the most part, there are some exceptions. Obviously, West Ham fans will argue all day with you about how their club is being run. So yeah, it was a really special day. The way it developed, the 3 goals, the irony of all of the 3 goal scorers being players that were here last season. Seeing Granit Xhaka captain the side, it was just brilliant. The roar from the fans, the noise. Ready to go, wise men say. It's fantastic to have the stadium of like that again, isn't it? Because we all know what a fortress it can be, what a cauldron of noise. We haven't perhaps seen it, in League One, despite the attendance has been good. It obviously improved in the Championship, but now it feels like sort of Sunderland are back in a way. And I think just on a wider point for the city as well, I feel like the city's regained a little bit of confidence. There's obviously building works underway.
Yeah.
We're starting to see improvements in the city centre. Obviously, that's juxtaposed to some areas of Sunderland perhaps haven't had the investment that they need further away from the city centre. But the city centre itself feels like it's got a bit of confidence back. And I think Premier League football really helps that, really helps sort of Sunderland as a city. Obviously, it helps businesses in Sunderland. It just does feel like the city's got a little bit of swagger. And I think, when football mirrors that in terms of a place and its belonging and its passion and its identity, I think that can be really, really powerful. And I think we've seen that really with both the West Ham and the Brentford games. Sunderland fans were instrumental in those wins, in my view.
Absolutely.
I think particularly Brentford, the sort of dragged Sunderland towards a position, didn't they? And they stuck with the team as well, which I think is really, really interesting. I think, what was it, 76 minutes when Brentford scored? And my heart sank, because I honestly thought well, we're going to lose this now. I can't see us coming back. It's the Premier League. But the fans didn't mirror my emotions. The fans really got behind the team, and then all of a sudden we've equalised.
Got level within 5 minutes, didn't we?
Yeah, it was a great response. And then, just to go off on a little bit of a tangent, but I've said this to a couple of friends, Bowers, but Sunderland have scored late goals now consistently for a while, and that can't be just a coincidence. It has to come down to mentality, fitness, the mentality of the coach and staff, the mentality of the group. I know the squad has much changed, but the head coach is still the same, and they've identified players that will, forgive the shameless plug, play till the end. So I think that's really, really important, and it just feels like, particularly at home, that something could be building for Sunderland. That said, the Premier League is going to be very tough. The home form will be crucial, but we will need to start picking up some points away.
Of course.
The Burnley performance concerned me because they looked so under par. Hopefully they'll know that and they'll be able to react. It is difficult to play away from home in the Premier League. I think it's crazy because, again, just to go off on tangents here, but you look at the fixtures at the start of the season, and no disrespect to Crystal Palace, but you think Crystal Palace away, okay, we might be able to get a point or win there. compared to Manchester City, Arsenal, even Manchester United,
Liverpool
Spurs,
as well. Yeah.
Chelsea, Liverpool, even like teams like Newcastle United. That's going to be a massive test. And then you realise, well, actually, Crystal Palace have won a European trophy and the Community Shield. They've got it.
I was going to say they won a European trophy. I bet they'd love that.
They've got it. They've got into Europe via the FA Cup
Yeah, they're no mugs.
and won the Charity Shield in 2025 by beating Manchester City, probably the best team around in the last decade. So
yeah,
it's crazy to think really that that's the test in front of Sunderland, that one of their sort of quote unquote winnable or drawable games on the road comes against a side that are in Europe and have actually won a major domestic honour. So whilst a point would be nice, I think it would be really tough to judge Sunderland sort of on this game. That said, you would like a good performance, but I think it just speaks to the toughness and the depth of quality in the Premier League at the moment.
Of course it does. I mean, like it is going to be hard, and obviously, Palace. Well, the next 3 games we've got are against sides that are in European football, aren't they? So of course they're obviously no mugs.
Could prove to be an advantage, that though.
Maybe. Oh well, that's the hope anyway. I mean, Forest in particular. I think we play them. I could be wrong here, but I think it's 3 days after they play Real Betis away in the Europa League.
And I think Newcastle are in Champions League action a couple of days or 3 days before they play us.
Yes, they are. They were away at Leverkusen, I think.
Yeah, which I mean, that's going to be Eddie Howe is talked a lot about additions and the strength of depth in the squad. That's going to be a big test for them, I think.
Of course it will. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'd like to think that Sunderland away over the course. Well, it depends how we do. I'd like to hope Sunderland away will be viewed as a hard game, especially with the cauldron of noise we can get. I'll quickly touch on Ian's point here, because he says all the games could have gone either way. West Ham and Brentford could have won. By that same logic, though, you could apply that to the Burnley game as well, where if Mayenda scores in the first 5 minutes, if Talby scores his chance, if Ballard doesn't go off injured, I mean, I think personally for me, like if you're looking at the start of the season, I'll tell you, I want to quickly ask you a joke question. This is my mate Doug, who lives in Edinburgh, but he's a Liverpool fan. So, and I think James will like this. So he says, on a scale of 1 to 10, how pleased are you about the Isak leaving the Magpies thing? To be fair, do you know what I think? I think personally, if I look at it objectively, like I'm not impressed with the way he's conducted himself and gone about it. And Wissa's to an extent is the same. There's a lot of, unfortunately for me, there's far too much player power these days. But I think from a Liverpool perspective, I think that's an incredible signing, because I think you're looking at a formidable attack. And from Newcastle's point of view, from a PSR perspective, they've probably set themselves up pretty well. But, I mean, obviously that was the main story of the summer, wasn't it?
I think there's blame attached all over the place, to be honest. Like, I know I'm not necessarily neutral when it comes to Newcastle United, because
neither of us are, yeah.
Because I'm a Sunderland fan, obviously. But like, thinking with me journalistic head, I think Alexander Isak has a right to feel a little bit annoyed, because by all accounts he was promised stuff by Gudusi and Amanda Staveley. They've since left the club. He feels those promises haven't been met, which is unfortunate.
Legendary Ethan.
He would claim that he told Newcastle United of his intention to leave quite some time ago. And for whatever reason, there's been a breakdown in communication. I think you have to look at Newcastle's hierarchy, which seems to be a bit non-existent at the moment. They don't have sport directors. They don't have the Florent Gasolfi or a Christian Speakman, something like that. So there's a little bit of blame attached to the club. That saying, I think when you are a professional football player, you shouldn't refuse to train. I think you should make yourself available to play. I didn't like it when Alex Pritchard did it before he left that Stoke game. He ended up going to Birmingham City, and he was a promotion winner with Sunderland. So I really disagreed with the player's stance on that. I know it's a short career. I know he's trying to push through a move, but you're on a lot of money, and I just think you should always turn up to work. And I understand why Newcastle fans would be completely enraged by that. From a Liverpool perspective, though, like, they have got some forward line. The new lad, is it Ekatike? He looks absolutely fantastic. What has he got? Has he got 2 or 3 in 4 games so far?
Something like that, yeah.
Just ridiculous. They've still got Mo Salah, who hasn't hit his top form yet this season, and then they've got Alexander Isak. Soboslai in midfield, I think, is a fantastic player. He's been playing a little bit at right back, so I think Liverpool are very top heavy, which is probably a good thing for the way they play. But I think that was one of the craziest transfer sort of sagas I've ever seen, and I think just blame attached everywhere I look, unfortunately, and it sort of goes to show. Yeah. It goes to show how quickly relationships can break down, and that, it's a little bit sad, isn't it, that Alexander Isak's name is mud at Newcastle now. But he scored in a derby.
Considering he scored the winner in a cup final for them, didn't he?
Scored in the derby against us twice. Scored in a cup final. Scored in the Champions League. So it's it is. I mean, I say sad. I'm not particularly sad about it
Well,
because
no, I can't say I am
it's
either.
just one of those things to me. But I think if you're a Newcastle United supporter, it is a bit sad, really, because the relationship has deteriorated so much that even the club didn't really reference his achievements when he left, did they? So,
Hmm.
but it's all about money in the Premier League, money and ambition, and unfortunately, when you get to that real top level, Alexander Isak thought his future was best served at Liverpool. I have a different perspective on that. Like, I know how powerful both northeast clubs could be, even Chuck and Middlesbrough. You know what I mean?
Liverpool are a different level, to be fair, though, aren't they?
They are a different level, but like I do question. I do question these players that don't see the potential of Newcastle United and Sunderland teams like
Yeah,
that, because I think, yes, they're on a different level to Liverpool, but you do have a chance to make yourself like a real hero in folklore when you play and do well for these teams. You look at Quinny, Phillips, Alan Shearer, um, but in the minds of players, they want to win things, and that's the ruthless reality of it at the moment, isn't it?
well, the thing is, for Isak, he's won something. He won something at Newcastle last season, but I know what you mean. I think he means the Premier League, Champions League, stuff like that.
But
Quickly on the.
I think this goes back as well to the hierarchy question at Newcastle. They have these really wealthy individuals. Whatever your thoughts are on the Saudi ownership, they are really wealthy.
Mm,
But Newcastle United seems to be quite far down their priorities at the moment,
mm,
and I think we're starting to see that. That's why the hierarchy at the club hasn't sort of been extended. You've seen a lot of people leave. There was the Dan Ashworth thing. It doesn't seem very settled. Obviously, Eddie Howe's doing a lot in terms of the transfer recruitment. So I think that's all contributed towards Alexander Isak thinking he needs to
yeah.
go to Liverpool to win things. If they'd had a project, something set up, something cohesive that they could show him, perhaps he might have been persuaded to stay. Obviously, wages comes into it as well, and Newcastle United didn't want to sort of break that wage structure. But yeah, just I mean, it was crackers watching it all unfold, wasn't it? The Newcastle,
Absolutely,
it
yeah.
was just something new every day. It was as I say, from an outsider's perspective, it was just like wild. And I actually found myself thinking, like, I hope something to this level never really happens with Sunderland, because it's just such a nightmare. I know they are different levels of transfers, but compare and contrast the way the Joe Bellingham exit was conducted. I know there are a lot of differences between the pair, but that was handled very well, very quickly. It didn't drag out. Um, and I guess the key contrast is Sunderland made Joe Bellingham a promise and kept to it. Whereas I don't
We've
think
done the same with Jack Clark before, haven't we?
Jack Clark, Ross Stewart, where I don't think Alexander Isak necessarily felt that the promises had been kept from Newcastle to him. So, I mean, Newcastle United would probably argue differently. Newcastle United fans would probably argue differently, and fair enough. There are a lot of different perspectives, but yeah,
Yeah.
crazy, I think, is the word.
Well, I'll tell you, let's go on to Doug. So you're saying, am I right in saying that your last game at Selhurst was the 4-0 away win? Pretty sure that was under David Moyes. Yes, it was. And I like Doug because he tipped us to stay up. So you're welcome on here anytime you want, my friend.
Looking back,
Right.
Powers, it's a shame we won that game, because if we'd have lost that game, we might have
Moyes
given
could have got sacked and
we
then we
might
might
have
have had
given Moyes the axe, yeah, which would have been a good thing.
well, let's less said about that dour individual, the better. But it's a shame, really. But I can't deny he has done well since leaving us. It's a shame, really. But right, but quickly before we talk on to the transfer stuff, yeah. But I think that to get back to Sunderland, how do you feel about the start of the season? Because obviously West Ham was like the event sort of thing. I think Burnley away, I think there was right to be for questions to be asked of that performance. From my perspective, if that was Brighton away instead of Burnley away, then I'd have gone established club, got better players. That just sort of stuff happens if you don't take your chances. Whereas with Burnley, I felt like that was one of the games we needed to be. Even though Burnley obviously have just got promoted, even though it was their first home game after promotion, we'd also just been promoted as well. So to me, I felt like it wasn't asking much to go to Burnley to get something. But but to be fair, I think Burnley did deserve it on the day.
Yeah, I think so. I think, well, stating the bleeding obvious here, but I feel a lot better about the Burnley result and performance after the Brentford game. Do you
Yeah,
know what I mean? Because you start to question everything, don't you? You start to think, well, actually, was the West Ham result performance just a bit of a fluke, riding the wave of promotion,
yeah,
riding the wave and the emotion of that first game back in the Premier League? To go to Burnley, it was disappointing. They did feel flat. I think there are caveats to the game now, having thought about it. Sunderland's first away
Ballard going
game,
off after 5 minutes wasn't helpful, was it?
exactly, that didn't help at all. Coming off that high, maybe, of promotion and the West Ham game,
Yeah,
and you sort of you go through peaks and troughs. That's one thing that LeBruce likes to mention, is the consistency. But for me, the Brentford game, I was hugely impressed with the result at the performance and just the general mentality as well, because you've lost to Burnley away from home, they're a promotion rival, and then you've gone 1-0 down, as I mentioned earlier, in the 76th minute, but you've actually come back to win the game. Now, I think that tells you a lot. It's a gut check, as they call it in boxing. It's a mentality thing, and I think Sunderland proves that they do have a bit about them. That saying, as I mentioned earlier, we will have to pick up points on the road if we're going to stay up. I think the home form is going to be massively important, obviously. It's going to be hugely vital, but we will need to start doing something on the road eventually. You can't be one of these teams that just doesn't do anything away from home, because then that makes it almost every home game over important, doesn't it? So the start of the season, I think, if you'd have told us when we'd lost 6 games on the spin towards the end, or no winning 6, whatever it was, towards the back end of the championship season, heading into the playoffs, that we'd actually get promoted and would win 2 of our first 3 in the Premier League, we'd have all been very, very happy with that. So yeah, I'm really pleased, to be honest. I think it's been good, and I think obviously Sunderland have bought a lot of players as well, so that they're starting to get to know each other. As I said there, Labrise mentions connection and synergy all of the time, and I think that's going to grow and grow. That midfield 3 I really like. The wingers, I think, are really, really good players. I don't think they've reached the potential yet. I don't think we've seen them at their best yet.
Exactly.
But I was critical of them to myself in pre-season, because I didn't think they'd offered too much. But I think game by game they're starting to get stronger, and I think they're hugely exciting. And we've signed some more players as well. I mean, the deadline day business, we've got players to come in. So I'm quietly confident that Sunderland can stay up this season. I don't want to say we definitely will, because it's the Premier
It's a
League.
long season, isn't it?
It is, and the Premier League's so tough, and we do have that AFCON question. But from what I've seen so far of the other teams as well, I genuinely think we have a really, really strong chance of staying up.
Well, like we said, I think what you mentioned before, I think the idea was responding to the Burnley game with a win. I mean, look, we lost to Huddersfield in the Cup, but I think when I found out Huddersfield got Man City, I think I was like, okay, I'm not as bothered. But I think with responding to it with a win against Brentford, and actually probably in a good way, coming from behind to win as well, because I think a lot of it is the goals. What's the cliche? Goals change games, and and often narratives can be judged one way or another by who scores first in a game and so on. I think the Brentford game, and you've kind of alluded to it there, I think the Brentford game showed the mentality and the character and everything else. And I made a joke once. I think Sunderland took the phrase "till the end" a little bit too literally for my heart rate. But I'm not gonna lie. I mean, we've just said there's talk about momentum. Thomas said there with momentum for the international break, and say if that, and SJ saying if that's the case, momentum is lost with other clubs. Yeah, but you're right. By the end of after the QPR game, I think that was the last game in the Championship regular season last year before the playoffs. I still had believed we would go up if we could get past Coventry. But obviously that's by the by. But it's amazing, isn't it? If you've been offered 2 wins out of the first 3, even forget the fact it was West Ham, Burnley, Brentford. That in itself brings its own pressures, because they're probably going to be the not easiest, because no game's easy, but one of the kindest runs of fixtures that we could have. And even then, I've seen people going about, Sunderland might still go down. They've only played West Ham, Burnley, Brentford. Well, if that's the case, then why didn't Forest beat West Ham? Why didn't Villa beat Brentford? It just goes to show how everything can just be construed either way. And look, there's going to be really tough challenges to come. As I've said, the next 3 games are against sides that are in the Europa League or Conference League. It's going to be tricky. But as you said yourself, it might suit Sunderland. What I'm keen to get your thoughts on is, I think personally, one of the reasons, I'm not going to lie, I tipped us to finish 17th. And it was the signing of Granit Xhaka in particular. And I still can't believe I'm saying Granit Xhaka playing for Sunderland in a legitimate sentence that's not a piss take, quite frankly. It's still a mental to think about. But I think not just down to him, but I think he was the factor in I thought, hang on, we're giving this a real proper go here. And it seems to me, and I think on paper, we look to have tried to learn from what's happened to Burnley, Luton, Sheffield United in 23-24, and then Leicester, Ipswich and Southampton last season. Now, it's a long season, but I think this lot have shown that even if we go down, we cannot accuse them of not giving it a go. You've gone silent, by the way. I think you've muted yourself.
My apologies.
There we go.
You talk about Sunderland learning from the mistakes of past relegated clubs, and I absolutely think they're doing that. But I think they've learned a bit from their own mistakes over the years as well. In the Championship, Sunderland didn't necessarily prioritise experience, and it paid off eventually, because we had a really young and exciting team. but they didn't tend to buy too much experience. I think that's definitely have to be changed and adjusted coming into the Premier League, because
Absolutely.
you need Premier League know-how and experience. It's so important, and Granit Xhaka is probably one of the best options you could have levelled at Sunderland at the start of the transfer window. I thought he summed up the performance against Brentford actually in a sense that Sunderland went behind, but they didn't panic, and his involvement, his assist for the winner, Wilson Isidor's winner, I just thought was so majestic, because he gets the ball, plays it down the wing to Enzo Lefebvre. Lefebvre sort of battles and then gets it back to him. And it's the
First
96th.
time cross as well, by the way. He doesn't take a touch.
He doesn't, but in the 96th minute, a younger player or a more inexperienced midfielder, somebody who hasn't played as much international football or the Premier League, they would have just tried, as you say, he did hit it first time, but they would have tried to get that ball into the box as quickly as possible. And although he didn't take a touch, he just slowed everything down. Everything was quite measured, quite poised, quite majestic. And he just swung his foot round it. He didn't rush his sort of process. He concentrated on delivering the ball or delivering a good ball into the box rather than trying to get it in there as quickly as possible. And that quality of delivery was what ultimately led to Wilson Isidore managing to get his head onto that ball. So I thought that was just Granit Xhaka in a nutshell, really, and what he brings to this team, that he didn't panic in that situation with 2 minutes left on the clock. He concentrated on what he needed to do and how successfully he needed to do it. And I think he's going to prove to be a fantastic signing. There was a lot of talk that his legs are maybe gone. I haven't seen that. I haven't seen that at all. I think he gets
If they
around.
are, he's hiding it really well, put it
Yeah,
that way.
I think he gets around the pitch just fine. I think his numbers as well, in terms of his running numbers, are right up there. Does he sprint around like an idiot? No. Does he have to? No. His positioning is so good that he doesn't need to do that. And there's also a recognition as well that he has two really young and energetic midfielders in front of him who can buzz around. And I think that's where the balance of Sunderland's midfield is really impressive so far this season.
Yeah, I think as well, like, one of the biggest things is that it comes down to, I'm someone who's always felt like the experience thing has been used as an excuse before. But I must admit, when coming into the Premier League, I did think, right, we need to sign some of it. And it's not just experience for the sake of it. So, for example, I would have loved us to have signed Jordan Henderson, not just for a sentimental thing, but I actually think he would have objectively offered quite a lot as well. And I think he probably will do so for Brentford. But at that point, I didn't envisage, if he told me then we were going to go for Granit Xhaka and signed Granit Xhaka, none of us would have believed it as well. So I think that's a big important thing you make, because I think it'll drive the midfield on. It'll drive the, and even though we've paid, what was it, around 17 million quid, I don't know if that includes add-ons or not, but paying that for him, that transfer fee will be paid back in spades if, say, Diarra develops into a, let's say hypothetically, 70-80 million pound player if he plays really well. Sadiki, likewise, if he plays to a 40-50 million pound player, that and his experience helps them on their development. So the Xhaka thing is massive for that alone. And Phil Smith, I think, said it on one of the On the Whistles that he did across the summer, which was Xhaka's. This is obviously the exception to Sunderland's strategy rather than the rule, which is fair enough. But so I think it's good that we're prioritising experience. And it's not just experience for the sake of experience. It is someone who has won the Bundesliga with Leverkusen season before last, dislodging Bayern Munich, which is no mean feat by any means, even if Bayern weren't their best standards. Last season, I believe he still was a regular in their team. They're playing in the Champions League on a regular basis as well. Obviously qualified for Champions League again for this season. So that's a level of experience that I think, and I want to ask you this before we get onto the transfers. Is Granit Xhaka going to be topped from a Premier League promoted club, do you think? Because it'll take some doing to top it, I think.
I don't think so. I think you're looking at any of the clubs outside of the top 6 to top 8 big boys would have been pleased with signing Granit Xhaka, in my opinion. I think for what he brings. I think I would suggest that the only reason people have been sceptical of it is because he's signed for Sunderland, if that makes sense. People have automatically thought, well, if he's signing for Sunderland, then his legs must be gone, he must be past it. He's signing for a newly promoted club. I actually think the opposite. I think he really wants to prove something. I think he wants to be part of something. As you say, he's most likely won his trophies for his career, hasn't he? He's represented Switzerland that many times. He's done what he wants to do, yet he's still hungry to be part of something more, something a bit different, something special. And I think that speaks to his mentality as well and his love of the game. I think he's going to go down as a cult hero. Not even a cult hero. I think he's going to go down as a bit of a Sunderland hero. If he keeps us up, helps us kick on. I think sort of in terms of his status in the city, I sort of think sky's the limit for him.
Yeah. Well, I think, and obviously the sky will be the limit for Sunderland if we can stay up this first season, because I generally think we could flourish in the Premier League if we stay up this first year. But that's for another day. We need to stay up first. Right. Let's quickly go through a couple of these questions. Jack, my good mate Jack, says, would it surprise you to find out the recruitment team have lists of players for all possible finishing positions this season? No, it wouldn't surprise me. I think they'll have a list of players. No, I think that this lot certainly do have a plan. And although James is right, there have been mistakes, and they were rightly criticised for those mistakes, Michael Beale, they've at least addressed that and gone, right, we've got a list of players for if we're in the Premier League and a list of players if we're in the Championship. So I don't know if you've got anything to add to that, James, but no, it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest.
The club clearly had a plan for the Premier League a long time ago, in my opinion, and they would have had a plan for the Championship had they not won against Sheffield United. I think that's what allowed Sunderland to act so quickly, was that they'd already contacted people, clubs, agents. If we get to the Premier League, would you be interested? You know, all of this sort of stuff. These conversations happen in football. It's nothing special. It's nothing new. But I think Sunderland managed to sort of negate, because historically, a team that goes up through the Championship, they struggle in the Championship playoffs, struggle in the transfer window because they haven't got enough time.
Because their season finishes a few weeks later, doesn't it?
Yeah, and they haven't got enough time to prepare. Sunderland managed to negate that very well, and I've no doubt that they had a list as long as their arm of players that they would have targeted if they were in the Championship, and a plan for that as well. So I think, you know, as you say, this recruitment team have made some mistakes, like, you know, Abdullah Bar, Nazrus, and you can't get every signing right. But I don't think you could accuse them ever of being unprepared. And I really feel that, you know, things might not always go right. You might get injuries, you might get players that don't settle, but they do the due diligence. There's a plan, and they are prepared.
And I think as well, one of the reasons I was particularly during the end of the season before last, 23-24, that I was keen to see how we would go about the following summer, despite the 16th place finish in the Championship and the disaster that was the second half of that season, was more because I felt like they'd done a lot of good work without Premier League money, without parachute payments, and I was very keen to see. And I think if you catch your mind back to last season, I was very impressed how Sunderland were able to really compete. I mean, okay, I know we fell off the top two race in the end, but we ended up what's what I'm looking for? We competed against Leeds, Burnley, Sheffield United. All three of them had parachute payments, and we were in that race until probably the end of February for automatic promotion. And although we ended up falling away, we still went up beating a parachute payment team at Wembley coming from behind. So I was very excited for this. So to lead it on to transfers, I was very excited for this summer window with what they could do. With obviously Gazolfi, I think, has got to get a lot of praise. Stuart Harvey obviously probably doesn't get enough praise. Christian Speakman and KLD, who I've been critical of before. I think you've got to look at all of them and say, if you're looking at the transfers, we seem to have really given it a proper go. And I was keen to see that when hopefully they spend the money well. So to get on to transfer, let's quickly go through some of these comments actually. Geordie, I think he was commenting on my streams before, how were the lads? Well, put it this way, I think I don't ever want Newcastle to win normally, but we could probably do with you beating Wolves on Saturday for me. But we'll see. Big up, mate. No, fair enough. Thanks for tuning in. Ian says, it's terrifying to think where he would be if it wasn't for Kiefer Moore. Tell you what, Kiefer Moore came good in the end. He went to Ipswich instead of us, but he felt sorry for us and then helped us go up at Wembley in May. Right, let's get on the transfers. So now this is from Keith Downey at Sky Sports, who put the tweet out. So if I'm apologies in advance, because I know I'm going to get a couple of names wrong, because I am terrible at pronunciations. But if any of this is incorrect, James, blame Keith Downey for this. But just a point. So this was Sunderland's summer transfer window. So 14 signings that were made. So it was Habib Diarra, Noah Siddiqui, Enzo Lafay, obviously was going to happen after his loan was obligated to be permanent, Reynaldo Mandava, I think it is, Chemsdean Talby, Simon Adingra, Granit Xhaka, Robin Roofs, Arthur Masuaku, Omar Alderete, I think I've got his first name, Noah Michele, I think it is, from PSG. Now, this is the one that always gets me. Is it Gertrudia or Gertruda from...
I'm going Gertruda.
Right, we'll just call him that for the sake of it. Gertruda, Brobby and Traore from Ajax. So Keith said basically total £156.5 million, obviously not including sell-ons concluded in the deals and stuff like that, and then add-ons could potentially be an extra 30 million. Is there anyone, okay, apart from Granit Xhaka, because Granit Xhaka obviously really impresses me, but out of the the crop of younger players that were signed, or well, okay, screw it. What signing impressed you the most? Is there any couple of what couple of signings really stand out to you as, wow, didn't expect us to sign them, delighted we have?
I thought Reinildo against West Ham was absolutely superb, and I think he's been steady since. I really like that signing. Alderete as well has been really, really good
Yeah,
since
I was
since he
staggered by
joined.
that.
I've
His
mentioned the
cross from Allende.
yeah, I've mentioned the two in midfield as well earlier on in the show, but I really like Noah Siddiqui and Habib Diarra. I think Noah Siddiqui just his engine is really impressive. His work rate, his willingness to sort of do the dirty work, but he's got a bit of quality as well. Habib Diarra, I really like because every time he gets the ball, he looks up, he looks forward. That might cost Sunderland at times this season, but I'd like to see him keep on trying to play that way. You know, the wingers are very exciting as well. Um, it's been such a whirlwind, hasn't it? The transfer window. We signed that many players that your head was sort of spinning with it all at one point because we were just sort of chucking money at these deals constantly, especially during the beginning of pre-season. That there was one sort of every other day, so it was really nice to see that roll in because we've never really had that level of transfer window, have we? Because it's advanced so much since we were in the Premier League last, and Sunderland obviously needed to spend that money to bridge that 24-point gap between Leeds and Burnley.
Well, we'll
But yeah,
bridge it to, what was it, 20? Hang on. Is it 22,
20,
20 minus 22 points to Leeds and minus 21 to Burnley? So we're on our way
yeah,
to a start.
something like that. But yeah, Siddiqui, Diarra, Reinildo, Alderete. I mean, Robin Roofs, what a signing he's looking already.
I know.
I mean, if you were to sell him tomorrow, you'd probably get like another 5 or 6 million than you paid for him. He's had an international call up. He's saved a penalty in the Premier League. He's looked really assured. I think he could be an absolute bargain, about 11.5 million or something like that.
Including add-ons, wasn't it?
I
I think
think
it was
that's
like 9 million or something, rising to 11 and a half. And
I,
now I'd argue he's worth at least 20.
I think that's ridiculous as well. And he wasn't necessarily Sunderland's first choice goalkeeper as well, which speaks to the level of meticulous scouting that the club now performs. Because there was it Martin Bulker? We looked at a couple of other Petrovic. The lad actually that's just got to Manchester United, is it Lemons, something like that?
Yeah.
He was linked as well. So they clearly had a list of targets that they were going through. Obviously, Robin Roofs was pretty high up on that list, but to get him for the money that they have done, I think that could be a real steal.
And I think as well, and it's not a slight, and as I'm sure you'll agree, it's not a slight on Anthony Patterson because he played a massive role in the playoff final to get us into the Premier League. But unfortunately for Pato, you have to be ruthless when you come up. You've got to assess it and say, right, there's a core of players we believe will be good enough to start regularly. I think Patterson's absolutely fine as number two, and I think Roofs at least probably gives him the chance to try and fight for his first team place. But the way Roofs has performed so far this season, and obviously there'll be times when he doesn't perform as well, but so the way he started the season, I think it's going to be hard for Patterson to get in the team. But I am grateful for Patterson's role in helping us get the Prem. But it's just that but you can tell just watching Roofs, like such as distribution's the big one. Like when I watch Robin Roofs, I think that most times than not, when he's not rushed into kicking the ball out, even times when to be honest, when he is slightly rushed into a clearance when he's being pressed, more times than not, it finds a Sunderland player when he's kicking the ball out. Whereas Anthony Patterson, although I do like Pato, one of the things that obviously drove everyone nuts was his distribution because it was poor. But I was really impressed with the way that we've handled that. As you said, we're looking at some of the other transfers. I think Habib Diarra's really impressed me. I think he looks. He just. James knows I try not to make a definitive judgment one way or another on players, and I don't like it when people write players off. So I can't do the opposite. But from what I've seen so far, I think Reinildo looks promising. I think Diarra looks promising. You can tell why Siddiqui has been basing his game and wants to learn off N'Golo Kante, for example. Xhaka is obviously Granit Xhaka. Alderete, I mean, he didn't even start against West Ham, did he? And then obviously he ended up, because he hadn't had much of a pre-season, if I remember rightly, comes on and then straight away has the technical quality that you just think is mental. Puts in a brilliant cross on Mayenda to score and get us on our way. But I think one thing that's brilliant is you look at players like, what was it, Roofs, up to 11.5 million. Alderete, 10.4 million. Then you look at, I think it's Michele, who one game, but if that Brentford game's anything to go by, someone who's got Champions League experience, 9.5, whatever it was. I'm looking at this now. Even Gertrude, for example, was someone who, and I think there was a tweet that resurfaced from Fabrizio Romano last summer, and it was linking PSG to him and linking like clubs that are way bigger than Sunderland to Gertrude, like genuinely linking them. So it just for me, I'm just still I feel like a kid in a sweet shop just reading some of this stuff because, with all due respect to these players, it's not long ago we were signing Josh Scowen and George Dobson like for us in the League One sort of era. But whereas now it's been incredible to think. Yeah, like I said, I think I'm really impressed with the way that they've gone about their business. And actually, for me, I think, dare I say now, I think that to start to wrap it up a little bit, because I'm appreciate that we've took 45 minutes of James's time, and I'm appreciative that he's come on for this long. But my gut says and obviously it's a long season. We've got 35 games left. We do have to pick up points away from home. There will be massive challenges to come, considering we've had Brentford, Burnley, and West Ham. I was going to say Wolves there for a minute, but I also think there is a genuine optimism that we can stay up. And I know that the Premier League is hard. I know it will be a battle, but I think getting on 6 points straight away is massive. I think obviously winning 2 games at home is massive. Obviously we don't want to rely on our home form, but yeah, I think that I don't know what your gut feeling says, James, but for me, I think there is every realistic opportunity to stay up. Even if we go down, we'll come down as a parachute payment club. We can make a couple of sales here and there. I think, but one of the things that I think gives me confidence, whether we go down or stay up, if you think in the likes of Diarra, Siddiqui, Talby, Adingra, Roofs, I think there was another one, Brobby, for example, 5-year contracts. From a PSR point of view, it means you can spread the cost over the 5 years, but it also means that if we sell a couple of them next summer, whatever league we're in, we can be in a position to command a significant amount of money.
Yeah, I think
this is why, by the way, sorry, James. This is why in our group chat when we were on Twitter, why I always had a meltdown when we got a player on a 2-3 year contract. Because this is why, for me, it matters. I just had to get that in there.
No, yeah, absolutely. I think, I mean, when you're in the Premier League, you've got in a position to offer sort of more long-term deals.
Yeah, obviously, yeah.
But yeah, I think,
it's easier.
As I mentioned, the Roofs deal, like he'd probably be, even if Sunderland went down and he has a good season, he'd be worth more now than what we paid for them. I think the same probably could be said of Noah Siddiqui, Habib Diarra. They will have resale value. You know, I think Speakman said at a recent supporters event that the club know what they're doing, and I can, given how well they ran the club financially in the Championship, I can sort of put faith in them that if Sunderland did get relegated, that they would be able to pivot the strategy, would be able to, sort of to move around and they do it quite shrewdly. I think they've earned that trust now. I think when it comes to finances, when it comes to sort of player acquisition, the board, the ownership, they have earned a little bit of leeway, a little bit of trust. Obviously, approval ratings were quite poor after the 16th place Championship finish, after the Black Cats barred debacle, and absolutely fair enough for that, deservedly so. But they've managed to turn it around. They've managed to start rebuilding the trust. There was the Kieran Louis-Dreyfus shareholder issue as well, right at the beginning of his time, where it turns out he didn't have a majority. Donald Satori and Methven still did, and that wasn't made initially clear. So there have been bumps in the road, but for me, I think they've done enough to win back my sort of support, everybody's support. Really, promotion helps with that, results help with that, but I think they're actually running the club in a manner that I see is very good. The investment at the Academy of Light, investment at the Stadium of Light. We've seen a bit of a glow up really off the pitch as well as on the pitch. So for me, they've got a lot of leeway. And if Sunderland were to get relegated, I don't think you could level that they hadn't really tried. I mean, I'll ask you this question, Bowers. If you were told tomorrow that Sunderland will get relegated at the end of the season, and I put the question to you, what more could Sunderland have done in the summer transfer window? What more could they have really done?
Yeah, the only area, and I could probably say, and I'm nitpicking here, is maybe right wing. I think whether I'm looking at, like, for example, I mean, I know this probably wouldn't have happened, but someone like a Harvey Elliott who's gone to Villa on loan with an obligation. But the issue there is Liverpool probably think, well, hang on, if we loan to Villa, it's much less likely they go down than Sunderland. So we're going to get that 35 million. So it's like it's a hard thing to.
A player like a Harvey Elliott is always going to go probably to a team that are pushing for the top 8, top 6. That's just the hard reality.
Well, not at the moment, they're not.
Not at the moment,
I know what you mean. Over the season, they will be, won't they?
Yeah, precisely. And I don't. as you say, you could nitpick on a few things, maybe, but I don't.
In
really,
general, to answer your question, though, in general, they couldn't have done much more than they have.
No, I don't think they could have. There's no like sort of glaring hole in the squad. There's no glaring sort of lack of experience or lack of talent. I genuinely think they've done an amazing job. Come what may, because sometimes I think you do have to accept that the Premier League is actually pretty good, very competitive, and that you could actually be a decent team and you could still go down. I think that's the harsh reality.
Yeah, no, I agree. It is. I think that, like I said, this is why it's going to be a really big fight. This is why I think every game. This is why I think for me the Brentford one was quite significant in many ways, because that was kind of the game I expected West Ham to be. You know what I mean? Like, it was kind of the even tune and coming and going, and ahhing, and everything else. And it was really important to come on the right. It's important for me to come on the right end of those scores, because we can prove that we can actually do it. I'll quickly get this question from Kevin King. He says, "Has their 5-year plan started to flourish yet?" Well, see, for me, you got to think of it this way. We've done. I think the first 5-year plan, if I'm right, from the start of their first full season, which was 2021-22. So that was the Lee Johnson, Alex Neil year, where we got promoted. At the start of that season, I'm pretty sure there was a fans meeting that they went to with the Red and White Army that said that their 5-year plan from the start of that season was to get back into the Premier League. If I'm right, they've done it in 4 years. I wouldn't be surprised if there's another 5-year plan in place now, where it's right now we've got here, whether it's through going down and coming back up, or the touch wood hopeful option that we stay up, become established again. Now that and obviously that one is probably well, both of them are really hard, but that one especially is probably harder to do in the current climate of the Premier League. But for me, I've said before that I think we've given ourselves a cracking chance, and I think and we've got to mention quickly Regis Labrise as well. I think that there's obviously been times that I've been frustrated with him in terms of timing of substitutions and stuff like that, but that's not new to Regis. I've had that with a few Sunderland head coaches. But in the games like the playoff final, in the games like even in the end, the Coventry second leg, he brought the subs on at the right times, and especially in the playoff final, bringing like Roberts on and bringing Isidore on, I believe it was, and bringing who was the other one? Who's the other one who came on? I was going to say Rig, but no, Rig started. I'll have to quickly look back at the match report from that game to remember it. But the point is, he's able to tactically adapt. And one of the reasons I think we will do better, taking away the minus 24 points thing to Leeds and Burnley as the joke, one of the reasons I think we will do better than both of them is because I think Regis Labrise's system will set us up better in the Premier League. He'll be more used to the Premier League. And I think Regis will be a bit better tactically suited to it, I want to say. Not in every game, obviously, because, as you said, the Premier League is actually quite decent. So it's obviously a little bit hard. But I think Regis will give us a good chance based on that. Whereas if you look at Daniel Farker at Leeds, now obviously Leeds could sack Farker and someone else could come in who's better. That could change things. But as of right now, I'm not totally convinced with Farker. Although, to be fair to Leeds, they have had a very tough start in, I think it's Everton, Arsenal and Newcastle in the first 3. That's very tricky. Burnley haven't had an easy one. Spurs and Man U away. For as much as they've been really terrible, they're still Spurs and Man U away, and obviously us. Parker, I think, gives them a better chance than what I think Company did or would have done, because of he'll adapt to the Prem better. But I've got a feeling with Regis Labrise, and we talk about his contract as well, by the way, fully deserved extension for me, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I think he's very tactically shrewd. I think his great strength, and we've discussed it loads of times. I think we discussed it the last time I came on, and we've discussed it on your podcast quite a lot. It gets said ad nauseum, really, by everybody, but he's just so calm. He's never too high, he's never too low. I think that's a great strength. And
Agreed.
I think tactically as well, I think we'll really start to see him sort of thrive. I think he is very tactically astute when he's got the tools. I know people will point towards his spell at Lorient, but he had a lot of players sold from underneath him when that relegation happened. So I think there is sort of circumstances involved with that one, but he just comes across as a really nice guy as well. I think the players probably quite like him. He's quite low key funny, to be honest. In his press conferences, he can be quite amusing. The last press conference I went to of Labrise's was before the Brentford game, and he is just quite funny. One of the reporters asked, given the transfer business that's already happened, given your start, if Sunderland sign another couple of players, are you confident of staying in the Premier League? And he just laughed and went, I don't know. and it's just
straight to the point, eh, Regis?
It's just such a great answer, isn't it? Because none of us know. He doesn't know, but he's going to do his best. But it's just sort of a little giggle and a little smile and like, well, I really can't answer that question, and it's absolutely fair enough because it would be stupid to say, oh yeah, we're definitely going to stay up because like Ange Postecoglou saying that he always wins something in his second season. Fair enough, he did.
I was going to say, to be fair, he did. Like, although the caveat is finishing 17th. Yeah,
it got used as a stick to batter him with, really, didn't it, during the whole season until he had the last laugh. So I think he's very shrewd, very intelligent, very tactically astute, and he comes across as a nice man as well. And I think that radiates throughout the academy. I think he understands the connection with the fans. I think he understands how big this club can be. And he communicates very well, despite not saying a great deal at times. I think what he does say is very effective. I absolutely loved Tony Mowbray, and I loved the Tony Mowbray press conference.
Was that because he gave you revels?
Yeah, but like Tony Mowbray, he could say a lot and he could get sidetracked, and it was brilliant. But he would speak for a long time, and sometimes you were looking for what you could find, looking for specific bits. But with Regis, it's just sort of very blunt and to the point. So two managers that I really liked and really enjoyed sort of being in the company of when I was afforded the opportunity. Both very different, but very similar as well, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, at least he didn't go down the David Moyes route going, well, we're going to be in a relegation battle and we're going to go down. So, it's good. I appreciate that he didn't go down the other way either. Right, the last question I'll ask you before we can let you go is, do you think this team's got potential to really kick on over the season as hard as it's going to be as it gels together? Because we forget it's a new team pretty much, isn't it?
Yes, I do actually. I think it is a possibility that at times Sunderland could look like they aren't in a relegation battle, if that makes sense. The caveat to that is it only takes a couple of games for you to be dragged back in. And I think obviously the fixture list over Christmas, which viewers will be well aware of, is mad. I think it's Man City twice, Tottenham, Leeds, Newcastle are in there.
Liverpool as well are in there, I think.
Liverpool. Spurs, I think, is January 3rd or something daft like that. So that
Brighton away, which isn't easy either.
That is going to be so tough, and obviously with the African Cup of Nations ongoing, it's going to be a real test of mettle, test of management. So I think this squad that has been assembled does have the capability to sort of kick on. I think it's possible that they could do well and finish sort of like mid-table. In reality, do I think that actually happens? No, just because of the strength of the Premier League. I do think ultimately Sunderland will be involved in a little bit of a relegation battle. I don't think they're going to be cut adrift or anything like that. I think I would back them to stay up from what I've seen so far. And I'm hesitant to sort of say, well, actually, Sunderland will be fine, they'll finish mid-table. I think it's a possibility, but I think the reality is a little bit harder than that.
Yeah.
Saying that, by all accounts, Sunderland have a little bit of wiggle room in January in terms of PSR they could possibly spend again if needs be. So that makes things very, very interesting coming into January, which isn't actually that far away. We'll get to sort of October.
Well, hopefully by then we're on 30 points and we're fine.
Yeah, we'll get to October and we'll start looking ahead. But look, for survival, Sunderland probably need, 8 more wins and a couple of draws in there.
Yeah, I'd say 8, 9 more wins. But even if it's 8 or 9, you've got around a fifth of them already, haven't you? And I think psychologically that's huge.
It is huge, and momentum's a big thing in football, and Sunderland just feels like a club with momentum at the moment. Again, caveat to that is if that momentum dips in the middle of the season,
it can go either way.
It can be very hard to get back and re-find. But I'm hugely positive, and I think the key thing is, and this won't always be the case with Sunderland in the Premier League if they do spend further seasons in the Premier League, but just enjoy it, I would say, because we've had a lot of rubbish, and I think the novelty of the Premier League, it will be really nice to enjoy it for this season. Similar to that Championship season where we first got promoted and ended up finishing 6th. Obviously, I'm not saying that's going to happen in the Premier League, but it was really nice just to enjoy a Championship season, wasn't it? I think we should all make the most of that in the Premier League. As I say, if Sunderland are in the Premier League for 5-10 years following this, then that novelty will wear off and you'll want different things to happen. You'll have a different set of expectations. But for now, it's just nice to be back. It's nice to be enjoying these transfer windows. It's nice to be playing, West Ham and Brentford, and we haven't even got to any of the big boys yet. So it's nice being on Match of the Day. It's nice, with all due respect to Don Goodman, who I really, really like. It's nice not having to listen to Don Goodman talk about us because, he was one of the pundits that would sort of address us and tackle us, and we don't have that anymore. We have a different set of pundits talking about us, the likes of Joe Hart and Chris Sutton and all of them. So it's nice to feel like we're back at the table, and long may it continue. I might get bored of it when pundits come out with terrible Sunderland takes in the future, but for the moment, I'm quite liking it.
Well, let's just say give me Don Goodman over Chris Sutton any day of the week.
But, I must say this, actually, Don Goodman gets a lot of stick for his commentary, but what a nice guy. And I'm not like...
He does seem a good lad.
I am not like... he probably doesn't even know who I am, and I'm not like friends with him or on first name basis terms with him. But from what I've seen of him in and around the press box and stuff when he has been there, he's just been super nice to everybody.
No, and I think sometimes that does go underrated, to be fair. You know what, the last things I'll say before we do go off is one of the things I do love is that I'm watching like proper coverage on Match of the Day. Whereas if you look at the EFL ITV highlights show, which I do, to be fair, still watch because I do a championship panel thing every weekend. But like, so I do still have an interest in the championship. But obviously with there, you've got a lot more league. You've got 3 leagues to cover as opposed to 1. You've got what is it, 7 times as many teams? Oh, sorry, but 3 or 4 times as many teams to cover. So I understand there's restrictions there, but the Match of the Day stuff is just like, I mean, and it's a shame really for those who passed away seeing us getting relegated from the Prem and didn't see us come back. It is a massive shame for them, but I mean, no. It's going to be a long ride. We know that. Enjoy it. Enjoy it while we can, because as I've said to Sean, we've had so much crap over the last so many years. And there's some fan bases that can claim they've had it suffer just off the road. But like, no, we've actually like really suffered, like really, really badly. And obviously there's clubs who've had it worse than us. Bolton, Morecambe as well. Bury, Sheffield Wednesday going on at the moment. There's a lot of clubs, and and that's just off the top of my head. There's clubs that have had it worse than us, obviously, but yeah, we deserve to enjoy this. So James, thank you ever so much for coming on. You want to quickly plug the Sunderland Echo and we can tell people where to find you?
I can do, yeah, I can do. I think people probably know where to find us by now.
In this universe where some people in the chat somehow don't know where to find you, where do they find you?
Yeah, so we are actually on YouTube as well, so go over there and have a look. We try and update the YouTube as much as possible. Phil does us on the whistle video, which goes down very well. And we do post-match reaction videos to the games, me and Jason Jones, various other little bits as well. Obviously, there's the newspaper if you want to buy a newspaper. There's the website across Twitter as well and social media. I'm on Twitter, or X as it's now called, if you want to follow me, at James Copley _. And yeah, that's about it really. That's all I've got to say.
Thank you ever so much, James, for coming on. It's been a lovely chat. Like I said, Alt Ending said he wanted this to be a regular thing, so maybe I'll keep badgering James and pushing him to come on regularly.
I would actually like to be on with Alt Ending at some point, because I think he's really good.
Yeah, I think we can get a few of us on. I think, yeah,
a little plug he did. Connor Bromley, an old friend of mine.
Yeah, I've watched it. Really good.
Yeah, really, really insightful stuff. So I'll plug Connor Bromley's channel as well while I'm on.
Yeah, go and subscribe to Connor. Go and subscribe to Alt Ending. Go and subscribe to every Southern YouTuber. I was watching someone...
Subscribe to them all. Mad Mistake.
Yeah, why not? Here we go, back again. Yeah. Well, then on that bombshell, I'll quickly give a shout out. One last one before I do go. There was someone. There's a YouTube channel called The South Stand, I think it's called, that I just watched. This morning she did a video like sort of assessing Sunderland's transfer window. So, and I think it's on, correct me if I'm wrong here, I think it's on something like 130. Yeah, it's on 114 subscribers, called The South Stands. Go and subscribe. Really good content. Just listen to our assessment of the window this morning. Yeah, James.
That's one thing I'll plug as well. Go and read me Patrick Roberts' article, because I was most pleased with that. I was very.
Yeah, we didn't really talk much about outgoings, but I think a lot of it was going to be about incomings. But yeah,
we'll do another podcast on that
with Roberts. Yeah, quickly. Yeah, let's hope he smashes it at Birmingham.
Yeah,
I really hope he deserves to be playing. But anyway, no, thanks James for coming on, and we will make sure to get you on, and I will get that on to get us to an Alt Ending at some point. We'll see if we can get him. Maybe I'll grab Sean on as well. We'll just see if we can just have like a 4 of us just
get
waffle away. Just to warn you, it might go on for like 3 hours. We'll see. But no, thanks ever so much, James, and thank you very much for watching. And yeah, until next time, I see you.